Hi YouTubers. I know you see me doing a lot of draping, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I love patterns, and I take patterns and I collect them. I probably have over 500 patterns. So I decided in this segment of Sewing with Niler, I will show you how I manipulate a pattern to give me the look that I want. So I'm going to show you how to make a cool top to go with a funky skirt that I made in the past. So let's get started. First of all, this is the fabric that I've chosen. I decided instead of draping this time, I decided to dig into my stash of pattern. As you notice, it has it's a dress, and it has a long sleeve dress, a 3/4 length sleeve, and a short sleeve. But I'm not going to make the dress, and this is also knit fabric, and my fabric is not knit, so I'm going to have to manipulate it to make it work. But I am going to use this pattern because I only want the top. Of course, I've opened up my pattern piece, and as you can see now, you can see the pictures of the top. And see, this is the top that I want to make here. See how cute that is? It just kind of sashes down, and I'm going to make it just a little longer so it tucks and it doesn't come out. So that means I'm going to be doing view A. See that? View A. I've located my pattern pieces in the out of the pattern. This is the view A front, and this is the view A back. You see it has this midriff portion here. I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to extend my pattern piece down to give me that length that I want. Now on the pattern piece, this is the back, and of course the back is cut on the fold, so there is no seam there. Here is my fabric, and it's not very much, but it's 60 inches wide, so it's just enough to do what I want to do. So I'm going to start with the back piece because here's my fold line, and the back is the piece I'm going to work with first. So I'm going to line this up on the fold, and I've already figured I want a size 14. I wear a 12 up top, but I want a 14 because I want to make sure that I have enough blouse, because I want it to be able to blouse a little bit when I tuck it inside of my skirt. So I'm just going to pin this in place. Okay, I'm going to lay the front piece right on next to the back. Now, I mentioned to you that I wanted to make this 4 inches longer. I actually think I'm going to do 5 inches longer. So I'm going to take my seam gauge, and I'm going to measure 5 inches, and then I'm going to put a chalk mark there all the way across. It's my mark here. And you see I'm just following the angle of the pattern itself. Okay, so I got that one marked and got that one marked. And another thing I'm going to do too, because I noticed in the front of this, she has that kind of low. I'm very modest. I don't like to show too much cleavage in the front. I want mine to look more like this. So I'm going to add a little extra fabric over here to my, this is the front and this is my fold line. I'm just going to fold it in a little less. That gives me more room, and that way I know I've got enough fabric to be modest. So what I'm doing is I'm adding about 2 inches to this. Now that I've got that all finished, I'm just going to cut where all my lines are. Now I'm going to turn it around because I want to cut going from this direction now. So now we've got the back. I'm going to go ahead and cut the neckline of the back. Now I'm going to cut my shoulder, which is across here. Now I'm going to cut the sleeve section open. And I think on this side, because I'm kind of broad across the shoulders, I think I'm going to leave about 1 inch outside of that as well, just to make sure I have enough. And I'm just going to cut that all the way down. Okay, and now there's the back piece cut out. Now I'm going to cut the front, but to start to cut the front, I'm going to go ahead and cut this section here where I added extra fabric. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut that straight down. Alright, got that done. Now I'm going to finish off the shoulder section. So I'm going to cut here, do my shoulder. And I'm going to cut up to do this is the collar section. And now I'm going to cut the back of the neck. Now I'm going to cut the side, and remember I left about 1 inch on the other side, so I'm going to leave about 1 inch on this side as well. May not be quite 1 inch, but there we go. I'm going to add 5 inches to this little mark right here, which is right there. So it means I'm going to cut straight down to this mark to get that little piece out of the way. All right. Now our pattern is cut out. We've got some markings on here that we want to make notice of. Like right here, this is going to be the sleeve or the armhole section. So I'm going to put a little mark right there. And I'm also going to put a little mark here. Well, I'll know that this will be my 5/8 mark here. And on the back, I got another little spot over here for the sleeve, the armhole section. So I'm going to put a mark right there as well. And I think that's going to do it. So now I'm going to remove the pins. Now that I've got my pattern piece cut out, this is one thing I advise you to do when you're working with patterns. Always go ahead and put your pattern pieces back in there. Because if you're like me, you'll lay them down and you'll go, oh, I'll put that back later. And then it gets all out of place. So you want to go ahead and put your pattern pieces back in there. And sometimes that can be challenging, but if you'll check out my video on how to insert a pattern back into your pattern guide, then you'll have no problem doing that. Now I have the pattern piece, and I told you I don't like reading pattern guides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the pictures. It's telling me here that you want to do some gathering at the bottom and here, and the shoulder, and there's going to be a stay stitch across there to gather that over, the neckline, and you're just going to sew these together and insert, and then you're done and hemming. So I've seen enough to let me know what I need to do just by looking at the pictures. So I'm taking the back, I'm laying the back down, and I'm taking the front. And what I'm going to do with the front, first of all, is I'm going to sew the back seam together. That was that portion, which is the collar. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but here is the shoulder, and this is the collar. So I'm going to sew the collar together, right sides together. I've sewn the neck section together, and as I go, I'm serging because I like to finish off as I go so I don't have to go back. So I've attached the neck together. So now I'm going to do the shoulder seams. So I'm going to sew together the front to the back at the shoulders. I'm not sure if you can see this, but I have sewn it together. Here's the shoulder across here. Let me lay it out so it can make some sense to you. There's the armhole there. And here's the other armhole here. So I've sewn the top together. Here are the armholes here. Here's the other armhole. And we put little marks where we're going to stop for the armhole. But here's one armhole. There's the other armhole. These are the shoulders, and this is the front. I'm going to connect the neck or the collar to the center of the back of the top. And I'm just going to, when I get to this point right here where I stopped, because there was a little mark there where the shoulder and the neck went together, I'm going to clip it down to that spot. And when I clip it, it gives me an opportunity to run this all together, and it just lays down nicely. And I'm going to repeat this on the other side, and I'll be closing the neck up, just sewing it straight across. This is where I maneuvered differently from the pattern, is I did a rolled hem with the roll foot to finish this off. And now the neck portion is going to go and connect into the collar and the center back. So when I connect that into the center back, then that's going to give us that nice little folded edge to look like we had a collar inserted. And I know it's kind of hard to see this on camera, but this is where our seam is pinned for our collar. And see, the rest of this is just going to fold over. This is the neck portion here. And this is where we need the scrunching. So I'm going to do a gathering stitch. I'm going to gather it, and then I'm going to tack it so it'll stay in place. So first I'm going to do a gathering straight down the center back. Now that I've got that section gathered, I don't want it to come undone. So I'm going to take a piece of fabric. I just sewn a piece of fabric together, and I'm going to stitch it down on top and sew through the gathers so my gathers stay in place. So now I've got that stay put in to hold the gathers in place, and then in the front I'm going to bring the front over to the fold line, Now that I've got the neck portion gathered and held in place, now I'm going to sew up the side seams. And to sew up the side seams, I had placed a mark on the fabric to let me know where the armhole section was. So I'm going to make sure that I leave the armhole section open. So now that I've got the shoulder seams connected, I've got the side seams connected. So I'm going to take the collar now that I've got that stitched down, and I'm going to stitch it down to the back of the neck so it stays in place. So I'm going to stitch that down now. So now what I'm going to do, I've already serged the end of my hem. So I'm just going to turn up a little small seam allowance to turn that up and hem that. As far as hemming the sleeve, I just serged and just did a simple turn up. Like I said, this is just a very simple, non-formal top. It's just something I wanted to wear with that skirt. And I went ahead and pressed over the pleat on the inside. And I pressed the pleat over on the other side. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to attach a tie, because I want these to tie inside. Like I said, I want this very informal. So I'm going to attach a tie to this end as well as to the end that crosses over. And I'll do a tie on the inside and connect to the inside here. So I've made one long tie, and it's probably way longer than I need. But I'm going to fold it in half, and then I'm going to cut. And then I'm going to fold them in half again. And then I'm going to cut them again, because I'll need 2 ties for each side. I'm going to take one tie and attach it to this side of the left and attach one to the right, and then one on the inside and one on the outside. So the ties have been attached. I have one tie attached to this side. I have another tie coming out of the seam here, and this is where I will tie them together. And then the same thing on the inside here. On the inside, I have one on the inside seam and then on the other tie, and then you just tie them together. But now I'm going to put it on the mannequin so you can see just how gorgeous it is with my black skirt. And I've attached it to the circle skirt that you saw me make, and it's ready to go. This video goes to show how you can take a simple pattern, cut it down to fit something that you need. So I hope this has been helpful, and I hope these tips come in handy for you. And hopefully you'll try this. Happy sewing!